Tell your friends. We need as
Yeah.
many people as we can to get on board. And look, as a movement, if we can make this a movement, we got a lot of power in front of us, and we ought to use that. We ought to wield that power for the, I'll say for the people, but we should wield that power for us.
All right. Welcome to the Fortify Your Data podcast. I'm Michael Hudak here with Jeff Bermant, CEO and founder of Cocoon MyData Rewards. Now, from surface level, it's super interesting because what he's doing right now is he's bringing a way for you to profit off of your data instead of, say, a Google, an Amazon, or a Facebook. And I'm going to let him kind of take it away and give his like real pitch of what it is, but that was my initial interest, and that's probably why you want to listen in.
Michael, thanks. And thanks, first of all, thanks for having me on your show. I super appreciate it. And thanks to your audience for even listening to this. So yeah, this is kind of an interesting thing. I've been in the tech business for now 9 or 10 years. And I actually migrated from real estate, which has got to be one of the weirdest migrations of all time. Or how do you get from a real estate career into software? I still can't code anything. I don't know how to code, but obviously I've learned a few lingo words, so I can throw a few lingo words that need me to. Don't ask me what they are at this point, but I could do it. But you know, through my studies of the tech industry, one of the things I've always been bothered about is things that should bother the everyday person. When I got into the industry, I was bothered by viruses, malware, all types of bad things that happen to you through your browser. I'm sorry, I was interrupted. My thing has always been really basically things that bother people about the web. And so when I first got into it, it was all about a better experience. And that hasn't changed in the last 9 years. And in this case, what I come to realize is that we all of us, we have been giving away our data away for free. So we spend all of our time searching for things or driving around, and all of this is being collected by others. And we're not part of the financial chain. We are if the product comes free, you're the product. And when I realized that, I'm a guy that looks at this and go, well, that shouldn't be. I mean, we should change that. And so we set out as a company to figure out how we could allow our individual users to monetize their data versus just sending it to Google. I mean, it's kind of like you're sending it to the slaughterhouse and don't even know that you're the product. And it's like, wait, why don't we wake up? It's just crazy. Why don't we wake up and we get paid for our data versus someone else? And of course, Google and all those guys, I don't think they like that idea, but that's what I'll say, revolutionary changes are about, is for us to become smarter, wiser. And it's just like REI, perfect example of the store. Hey, well, there's a membership and we get paid back something for going there. And yet Google and those guys, they give you some free services and that's their payback.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of people really misunderstood why a lot of these major websites were free, right? The only one that seems to be slightly altruistic is Wikipedia, in my opinion, and they get their money from donations.
Yeah.
So, and we touched on this a little bit before, but I think it's super important because there is a disconnect between people just not understanding why their personal data is important, right? And so I assume that you've heard this argument, maybe perhaps from an investor or just somebody hears it. How do you describe that to people where you're trying to prove to them that their personal data is important?
Well, it's a mixed bag. So here's the thing. The internet, just remember, the internet basically runs on free. So if we just took away that idea that it's free, now you'd see no advertising, but you have no internet because there's no way anybody could make any money. I mean, they have to make money somehow. These things have to operate. That it can't be totally free. So they have to take some data. And the good news is, in my opinion, is they're not looking for your personal data. In fact, I'm not sure that's even legal. to take the real personal data about you. They can take segments about you and monetize that and match that up with other parts. But then they really don't care. I mean, I've never heard of one of my data brokers saying, hey, I really need to know who this guy is. I mean, it's much more, well, what's his interest? So we can show him advertising. Or, I mean, even the movement you make, people don't realize they get in the car and they drive somewhere. Even that's important. And we all do it because we get on our, if that phone's on in your car, they're following you. And in fact, I hate to give you the bad news, but if your phone's off in the car, they're following you, right? And so to me, it's like, well, it's a natural progression of, well, if they're following you and they're collecting all this data, it's your data. That's the way I look at it. It belongs to you. Otherwise, if you turned everything off, they wouldn't get anything. So why shouldn't you get a profit out of this as well as they get a profit?
And so when they're monetizing your data, are you seeing them monetize it outside of things like advertising, or are you seeing something that maybe I'm not? Because it seems that everything kind of gets filtered into advertising these days.
It's advertising. It's the buyer habits. So let's take a hedge fund. Hedge funds, they want to know what's of interest to a user. So for instance, they might look at it and see that everybody's driving to Target. Well, okay, so now they're going to go bet on maybe the guys that, since it's a hedge fund, maybe they're going to bet on the guys that are not Target and that have been losing that traffic, and they're going to go do their financial analysis. So they're buying that kind of data to see what's the trend. And the trend might be, hey, this one ketchup is really hot, so I'll invest in that. So there's a lot of reasons why that data is important. They can look and see, I've seen these maps, I've seen the heat maps of, how many trips you make to Starbucks. Well, that's important to Starbucks, and it might be important to another coffee company that wants to know, and this is in general, it isn't used particularly, but they want to know, okay, what's the trend? Where are people going? What can I advertise to you? But also a hedge fund. It might be like for truckers, it might be, the truck, did they change their truck driving patterns or their speed? I mean, are truckers going slower? There's all types of data that's important, and honestly, probably it's $1 trillion business.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, really, when I think about it, I do think that advertising today is the best use case. But when I look at the grand scheme of things, and so I actually have a Google Pixel phone, right? So I am 100% in the Google stratosphere of being tracked, and I'm somewhat comfortable with that, somewhat uncomfortable with that, right? It's just part of
Yeah.
you can't even pay for it, right? You can't pay for some of these services; they're just going to be free. So when you're thinking about all of this data being manipulated and you see all these different weird use cases popping up, that's where your company fits in, right? Do you think that eventually the general consumer base is going to move to solutions like Cocoon MyData Rewards?
I think there's a vast amount of people. Once you make it easy enough to collect this money back, it's kind of like you get a rebate on your phone. I mean, think of it that way. Your phone is seeing all this data about you, right? And they're getting to collect it. And you're like, well, can I get a dividend off this? And this is why Andrew Yang, I mean, he's one of the founders of the Dividend Project, where, the guy running for mayor, he ran for president. And he's like, wait, we should get a dividend out of this. And so I kind of feel right now we pay our people, I believe in cash, but we pay people through through PayPal. So you sign up for PayPal and you get paid. But I believe in the future, hopefully it won't be too long, we'll get you paid back on your credit card, your debit card, however you want to get that dividend back. And you can just look at it as a dividend, like I'm part of this company that is paying me for my data. It's just a dividend. It's kind of like, you joined REI and you're going into that store all the time because you're on the web. Think of it that way. You're on the web or you're in their store and you're buying stuff. In this case, your data is what you're selling, what they're taking from you, and you're getting a cash back. You're getting a data dividend from them. And that's a really good way of describing it to people who are maybe fearful. But what people have to understand is you're being taken now. All that data, and I will say this, that there is this trend in the United States that you can give permission to someone, which I totally agree with, to take your data or not. I don't know what the services are going to look like when you say on an app, no thanks, I don't want you to take my data or sell it. I haven't seen, I do know that there are degrees of that going on now. And I'm totally for that. If you don't want your data to be sold, but just know every time you turn on your computer, if you're not using a VPN, and even a VPN might sell your data, but if you're not using some sort of VPN, your data is being sold. You're being sold, so to speak. It's disturbing as that might seem, it's just the fact of life.
Well, yeah, and you said it before, and I'm sure that many people have said the sentiment before, before you, but it's if you're not paying for it, you're the product, right?
Yeah.
So if somebody wants to get involved and download your app and take it for a test ride, they can do that today, correct?
Sure. We're not iOS yet. We've still got to build the campaign. We're going to be funding shortly. So if anybody's interested in crowdfunding, it's $100. I mean, the way I want to look at our crowdfunding is I really want this before people. I mean, I'm not that crazy about the big giant investors coming in. Eventually, if we want to grow this thing, but just getting involved and getting a piece of the action, it's as little as $100. And so you could go now, you could go on Android, you could go and download the product. And here's the results. Right now, if you're driving, it's geolocation. So we're collecting that geolocation. And if you say to yourself, oh, I don't know, geolocation, your geolocation is already being collected and sold. So why don't you get a piece of the action? We're also offering web browsing. So if you're browsing the web, it's not paying very well yet. It's going to take us some time to build that audience so that we can demand, think of it this way, we're going to demand payment for you. We're on your side and we're saying, look, you should get paid, and we're going to demand the best prime payments we can, the highest price or the most amount of money that we can collect for you. That's our job. And so you can go download it today for Android. It's Cocoon, it's in the Play Store, in Cocoon MyData Rewards, or you can go to trycocoon.com and download it from there, which will take you to the Play Store.
Yeah, and I'll make sure that those links are both in the show notes
Yeah.
for whether you're listening to the audio or video portion of it.
Yeah.
So, and I guess I'm interested in this. You may or may not know the answer to it, but what does like cybersecurity policy play into this, right? When you start talking about personally identifiable information, is that something you're playing with right now? Is GDPR an issue? Not even.
No, I mean, first of all, we don't collect any financial, we don't collect any personal PII information about you at all. We don't even have your name. And we have an email address, and a lot of people don't probably give us a real email address. We do need a PayPal account, but once again, that's private, and we don't get into that. This is general data that's already being passed through. So just think of it the same way. If you get on Chrome, which 1.5 billion people do, that data is being passed through to Google, and they're taking it and they're monetizing it. They do it a little differently. They actually don't sell it. They give it to advertisers, and then advertisers, pay Google for those ads. And so that's how they make money. And I think last number I saw was $470 billion made off of advertising from Google. I mean, it's a lot of money that we're just giving to people. And then so I think we should change the world. I think there should be a share. I mean, look at all the things today we're talking about. We should share, that we should all be involved together. Environment, all types of things. And, count me in on the environment of making a greener world. And the same thing here. Well, why shouldn't we get to share in these profits? Why is it just, this one or two or 10 companies that get all your money? So no PII is passed through. It's just general information. If you're browsing the web, it's your general browsing. We don't pass through financial, we don't pass through medical, we don't pass through, and that's better than, I'm not saying that Google, what they do with that data, but at least we don't even send it to anyone.
So how do you guys, how are you guys making money then?
So what we do is we do a split. It's like a commission.
Mm-hmm.
We pay the customer 70% and we take 30%. And it's straight along the line, straight up. We take care of all of our own expenses off that 30%. So all the servers, all the data, all the work we have to do, that's included in our 30%. And I felt the customer should get 70%, and we'll probably have some staggered things where a user will get 80% if they hit some milestones and stuff. But really, the goal was to figure out how we could share in this revenue and not have to have it all one-sided.
I think that's phenomenal. I think that's a much higher percentage than I would have anticipated somebody telling me. So especially I kind of come from a little bit of a boxing world, and sometimes you see how much of the promoters take, but not that that's a one-to-one comparison. Probably a weird thing to even bring up.
I think
Anyways,
I do want to point one
yeah.
thing out. I'm not a big, I'm a big fan of fair share. I truly am. I think that the world should be a lot different than it is, and it can be. And there are guys like me that, whether I consider myself a visionary, I don't know, but I kind of see myself as somebody that wants to see a change. And I just think this is unfair. I mean, it's as simple as that. I think, wow, this is unfair, and I can do something about it. And I'm lucky that I had the background skills, because I lost tons of money on the first thing that I ever built. And I'm still here, and I'm still fighting for people saying, hey, listen, we should get paid for our data.
100%. And because you touched on it before, what advice do you have for startup founders? It sounds like you've had a career of successes and failures.
Oh yeah.
Is there any kind of general advice you can pass along?
Yeah, be persistent, number one. Don't be stupid. And I would say there are times where this may work out really fine, but if I rolled back the clock a year, I would say I was being stupid and not making a very smart decision. But be persistent, number one. Do your research. Do not go out there and think that you're going to discover the next new thing and you haven't done your research. So go look at stuff. Also, if you find something very, very, very new, be very cautious of that, because you'll find that investors are really cautious about something. So if you modify like a game, that's probably going to be fine. But if you do like I'm doing, which is, it's almost antithetical, where people, it makes sense once you start talking about getting paid for your data, but the investors are looking at you like, it's like Bitcoin. How many investors jumped into Bitcoin when it first came out? Only a few were brave enough to do it. And now, well, we don't know the final word on Bitcoin, but it looks like it's going to be successful. And same with, so when you get into this stuff, make sure that you've done your homework, you've done your research, be persistent, try and find other investors for you. Do not stake everything of your own financials in this. You may find that, I hate to say this, but a lot of companies fail. And so, I don't want you to be wasteful and end up in a really tough situation.
Well, that's an interesting, because I ask this to a lot of people, mostly because one, I want to learn, but two, we have a lot of early stage startups that I end up interacting with. When you say investors, do you like the way kind of venture capital is set up? Or when you say investors, what specifically do you mean? And is there a type of investor you should seek out?
So, when you first start a startup, friends and family, go to your friends, go to your family, put some money in. No one's going to want to see you not put some money in, put some money in. Go to friends and family, share the idea, see if they'll put a little bit of money in. And then your next step is to go into, I'll say, the angel round. Now, the angel round, you need to have a product. It needs to be working. It should have some revenue, or, it can have two things. You either have a lot of revenue or a lot of signups. So there are companies that have very little revenue. Facebook, all those guys were stars at that. They had no revenue, but they knew how to get there. They knew what they were going to. So when they pitched somebody that said, hey, we have no revenue now, but we're building our audience, and then here's how we're going to get paid. And they can actually show that to an investor. The other way is have revenue and then show your business model, like, well, here we are. Like today, I can show a business model that shows, hey, in 5 years, if people like what we're doing, it's going to be a very successful company. Is it going to be as big as Google and those? No, but does it need to be? No, it just needs to do something for the world that's good for the world. It's a little different than just a typical thing. I mean, we're putting people in people's back in their pockets, and to me, that's like, okay, there's part of the giving. It's part of the business, and that's, you get to a business like this, it's not very often that you can get that kind of satisfaction where you're actually giving money back to someone. Usually the satisfaction is customers happy. Well, in my case, customers happy because you got money.
Right. Everyone likes the person that hands them money.
So once you get to the investors, let me finish the kind of the investment world. The angel investors come along, maybe they put in the 25, 50, 100,000, and you build that along. Crowdfunding is now very popular. So another way to go is like us, through crowdfunding, where the individual puts in $100 and look for a truck driver who's making $20 or $30 a month. He's put in 3 or 4 months of money he's getting for free, and he's saying to himself for 5 months, hey, this is a good bet for me. So crowdfunding is another way of going, which used to not be a revenue. And then once you get to a certain point, you can now go a couple different ways. You can now go to a VC, and you can work with the VCs, the venture capital guys, and they can, believe me, they want to boss you around some, but they have connections like there's no tomorrow. So they bring some great value to the marketplace. And if you can work with them, it can be your worst moment when you when you sign up with them, or your best moment, and the tough moments when you're working through them. But in the end, if you're successful with the company, everybody comes out pretty happy.
I think that was fantastic advice. You really touched on kind of every step of the way in a very succinct manner. And I appreciate that, because I will clip that and share that with all my little startup people. Maybe not little startup people, but you get me.
Yeah, of course.
So I think so when did you get in? So let me take it back. What made you decide to move from real estate into technology?
Stupidity. So it was interesting. I'm always a guy that wants to do something different. It's my personality is built like that. So when I was in the building industry, I spent a lot of time trying to figure out, like, well, how do I build middle income housing in Santa Barbara? Because we really need that. We have low income housing. We had no middle income housing. And I was like, well, we should figure out how to do that. That was a trial and error thing, mostly came out good. And so I've always been one of those guys that wanted to work outside the box. And so when I got into the tech, it was really, I was bothered by the fact that everybody's following me around the web, and I was getting messages and emails and stuff that I was like, wow, all these guys are following me. Not that it's changed. And if you're not using my secure browser, it hasn't changed at all. I mean, if you're on Chrome, it's still going on. You're still being followed around the web. And I didn't realize that there was a value to that. So now that I've realized, well, wait, I can get paid for that. Well, maybe I don't care now. Maybe go ahead and follow me around because I'm making money off of you. So you're making money off me, but I'm making money off of you. It's not a bad deal. So then I got into the idea of, could we build, a browser that was secure and private? And we were successful at building it. We weren't successful at the economics of it. And that's just being brutally honest, that didn't work out. And that's a piece that I hadn't figured out, and even with my vast financial experience, it hadn't dawned on me that wishing that it would be financially successful was going to happen. And the other thing you need to look at is, what do the investors want? So investors yawned at me when I said, hey, we have a secure private browser, and they were like, yeah, okay, but another browser, you're too young to realize this, but there was a browser war, and these browsers thought it out. And so investors realized that, and they were like, no, I don't want to be involved in that. So I got it from the bottom line is, I was interested in it, and I'm a man that puts his money where his mouth is, and I gave it a shot. The first product, I would say, was not successful. It could turn out in the future to be a product that we bring back. But it led me to this idea of monetizing people's data for them.
I think it's an altruistic motive. I really do. I think that it's something special. It's something that I've seen people talk about, but I haven't seen people actually act on it. And so for that, I am very appreciative that you've jumped on the podcast.
And don't get me wrong, it's kind of I mean, it's a mix of, I mean, do you want to say capitalism, socialism? It's a mix of social and capital. It's really capitalism, but it's capitalism where it's, I mean, the best example I can give is like REI. You're part of the plan. You're not just, a widget that's being taken from. And that's okay. I mean, as long as there's a service that's going on, you're getting something out of it. I just love the idea, though, that you can get paid for this. And you're already, as I keep saying to people, which say, well, I don't know if I want to do that. The answer is it's already happening to you. You're already getting all this data is being taken from you already or flowing to these people, and you're just not part of the financial. And I'm like, well, let's make you part of the financial plan.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it's stupid not to.
Yeah. It is kind of stupid not to. And I know people go, oh, I don't know, my data. Yeah, the only way you're going to really protect your data is one, you don't use your internet anymore. You just get off the planet, so to speak. Or two, you go get a VPN, but everything you have to do is through a VPN. So you go, well, I'm going to browse the web through a VPN. That's going to cost you $100 or so per month, per year. And then two, when you get in your car, unless that VPN is running in your car, they know where you're going. And it's not harmful data. It's data like you went to the mall. It's like data I went shopping. Do you really care if they collected that data that you went shopping? And let me put this out to you. Incognito. Everybody goes, oh, incognito makes you private on the web. It doesn't make you private on the web. They
makes you private to your history.
Exactly. And by the way, when we built our browser, we built it so that it was in the cloud and nothing was on your computer. When you log out of our browser, there was nothing there. And I stored it in the cloud, and you had the ability to go, I don't want anything stored. I don't want anything to know where I went. I don't even want my IP address collected. Well, that was what the privacy was about. But if you turn on incognito today on your Chrome, they know exactly where you're going. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to go tell everybody. It just means that they know where you went. And it's like, okay, that's the way the world is.
You can't not be tracked. I mean, you can to some extent with VPNs, but even then they know that you're using a VPN, right? It's just a kind of a
and I've heard horror stories, and this is secondhand, so I don't have firsthand knowledge, but I've heard horror stories that even they sell
data. Some of them, yeah.
And not all of them, but some of them sell the data. And so even there is, and then I think that's wrong. I mean, if I had a VPN company, I would never do that. I mean, I'm the kind of guy that says, look, if we're going to do something for you, we're going to do it. We're not going to go then, oh, well, we'll a little sneak around and we'll do something different. I don't believe in that stuff.
Well, right. And I will say that I've heard those and I've seen some of that, I'll say first and a half hand, but in those instances, those VPNs are free, or at least they were, right? And again, It goes back to that. If something's free, there's a catch.
Right. You're the product. Usually you're the, I hate to say this because it's kind of sad, but it's the way the free works. Because somebody's got to run those servers. Someone's got to, do something with that data to help you. But if they're not collecting some money on the other end, they're not in business, and neither are you. You don't have a web.
Absolutely. And it's crazy because I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I remember somebody did a study on if people paid for their Facebook accounts, how much money they'd have to pay for Facebook to make the same amount of revenue. And it was like $12 a year or something like that. I'm sure it's less now. It's just crazy to me, but it's also not crazy because people just didn't know, right? If you and I wouldn't know if we weren't, actually studying it, and the majority of people don't study things like that.
Yeah, I did a test on our browser way back, and the test was, well, let's see if people would pay for the browser. And I was charging $19 a year. It was nothing compared to a VPN.
Yeah.
And it gave you the same results. The only thing that a VPN would do would push your documents through, but it didn't when we were probably more private than a VPN on the web, and including nothing on your computer when you left. And I didn't have any real interest in that. I mean, that was not a product that people had a real degree of interest on it, because they're used to free. But they also have to look at the other side. When it's free, you're the product. And so if you're the product, the way I look at it is, well, you're doing most of the work. So you should get now, you're getting from us the majority of money. That's just the way I work the math out. And the reason why you do that is it's not a lot of money to start. So if you came on to, let's just say you come on to Cocoon MDR, and I don't want to discourage anybody, because over time it's going to grow, and I want it to be a movement. I don't want this just to be, well, I only made $3 or $4 a month, so I'm not going to do this. It's like, if we band together, then we can start using our muscle, just like anybody else, a labor union, to getting a better deal. And that's what I'm about. I'm like saying, okay, you guys that have our data, we want a better deal from you guys. You only want to pay us $3, we're worth 5 or 6. And on behalf of the user, I'm like the utility company for us. I'm on the ones who are yelling at the utility companies, hey guys, we want something more out of you.
Where do you see this in let's say 5 years? Do you think this is something that's widely adopted amongst just tech people, or do you think it's going to break out into the general masses?
Well, if the trucking industry is any indication of the masses getting involved, I would say, there'll be I say a small portion of people, there'll be 50, 100 million people that will say to themselves, this is easy money. This doesn't take anything. It came back on my credit card and I made $10 or $15 for the month. And yeah, in theory, I mean, just think of how many people think, well, I should, it's part of the movement and this is the fair way of doing it. So I think that there'll be, I mean, do you think you'll ever take over, Chrome or those guys? Probably not. But just satisfaction and knowing you're getting paid, I think in 5 years, yeah, it will be like a Bitcoin industry. And maybe, we're going to partner with the Bitcoin companies where you get to invest your money. So let's just say, here's a perfect example. My trucker friend, a woman who's pitching for us, people are going, well, what's $10 or $20? She took $20 off of a free product and invested it in, I think, doggy coin or whatever it's called.
Dogecoin.
Dogecoin. I knew I wouldn't say that right. And she made $4,800 on her $20. So don't just think, oh, it's only $20. It's no big deal. No, if you're smart with that $20, you might be able to turn in, well, first of all, you could turn it into a pack of beer or something. And second of all, you could turn it into maybe $4,800 if you're smart about your money and looking for investment. If it's up to me, we're going to try and help you do that too.
I think that's huge. I think that's what this industry needs. I think you have a lot of obstacles ahead of you. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I think that on a surface level, if I was walking down the street and I was talking to people and just saying, hey, would you like money for what you're already doing? They're going to say yes.
Yeah.
And so
I think it's going to take a little bit of time for people, and for other people, like, well, that's too much trouble. Anything's too much trouble, right? And so I'll just, if you talk to the millionaire guys, they're like, it's too much trouble. But to a person who could use an extra $15, $20, or could take that and invest it in Robinhood and make a nice return on it, to me, this doesn't take anything. This is an app. Let me put it this way. This app, if you don't even use the browser, if you turn it on and you drive around with it, you're going to end up with money in your pocket. I mean, you're going to be delighted to go. I mean, I remember the first time I made my first $25. I was like, wow, I didn't do anything.
It's passive income.
Yeah, it just showed up in my PayPal account. I was like, I collected like $100 and some odd over a 9-month period of time. And I actually went out and bought a pair of shoes. And I was so proud that I got these shoes for free.
Yeah.
It was nutty. I mean, it felt bizarre to me that that's what could happen. But why are we just giving away our data? I mean, that's the point I always make, is it's a commodity. We should be in on that commodity.
Absolutely. And I know that we're kind of coming up on that, the
Yeah.
time limit. So I want to end it with this. What's next for you? How can people get a hold of you if they need to, if they're looking to get involved? Obviously, I'm going to have the links to Cocoon My Data Rewards. But what if somebody wants to invest, anything like that? Do you have anything else you want to plug? The floor is yours.
First of all, I want to plug the idea. I want to plug that if you're going to build something, think of how you might differ the monetization versus the typical way, which is I'm just going to give this data away or make all the money myself. Do something like we're doing, which is do a share, do a fair share with people. That to me should be their future. It shouldn't be all, it's just whatever I can get out. As far as downloading it, trycocoon.com. You put that on the website, and we will be on WeFunder shortly for the raise, and $100 in. If I could make it $10, I would. I think there's a minimum limit, but to me, this should be us, the people, building this, and nothing more than I'd love to return to an investor. He puts in $100 and gets $5,000 back. Just as what I was talking about earlier. To me, that'd be the best thing I ever got to do for somebody. I mean, literally, I've made plenty of money. I'm a fairly wealthy guy. To me, this is like, wow, we have an opportunity to really do something different.
I wish more people were like you, genuinely. So I see
appreciate
your
it.
head's in the right place. It's like I said, I'm very impressed. So I will be downloading that app, obviously, and I'll be
Well,
pushing it. And
tell
it's
your friends. We need as
yeah,
many people as we can to get on board. And look, as a movement, if we can make this a movement, we got a lot of power in front of us, and we ought to use that. We ought to wield that power for the, I'll say for the people, but we should wield that power for us.
100%. And it's such a breath of fresh air to talk to somebody on Fortify Your Data that's helping people fortify their data.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
it's a
like I
cool
said,
thing.
I
Best
really
thing I've
appreciate it.
ever, hey, best thing I've ever gotten to do in my entire life is this.
Yeah,
Nothing better. So
better than
thank
real
you so
estate.
much for your time today. And I hope the audience enjoyed it. I hope they got something out of it. And I hope they'll come and support us in some way. I know we don't have iOS, but if you just come and sign up, even if you don't have iOS yet, we don't have iOS, if the numbers show, that's fantastic.
We'll do it.
Cool.
I'll pump it. We'll talk. All the Fortify Your Data people. We'll check it out. It seems like there's no risk. So
There's no
let's get it
risk.
done. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Great. Thanks, Michael.
Mhm.